Okay, so let's take a quick look at what we're going to cover today in our agenda. First, we'll give you just a very brief overview of who TrenData is, the sponsor of today's webinar, and then we'll dive right into the meat of the webinar topic. So we'll look a little bit about current data of pay and equity in the US and some major legislation that has come out which might have an effect on such things going forward. We're going to look particularly at the processes of doing equal pay audits and equal pay and opportunity audits, and give a recommended step-by-step process, which are one of the things that this new legislation is incenting. Then we'll talk a little bit about how technology can help in conducting these audits and also keeping a corporate and global-wide look at your pay and employee practices. And then we'll do a demonstration of the solution, open it up for questions at the end. If you have questions, we do have everybody on mute right now. If you come up with questions during the presentation, if you'll just email them via chat, we'll queue them up to answer during the question and answer session. So moving forward, so a little bit about TrenData. TrenData is a cloud-based platform that provides organizations the ability to generate advanced and predictive analytics by taking very key metrics, HR metrics, and formulating them from data that comes from multiple applications. So you could have most of your data in your HRIS system, but you might have performance and career data in your talent system, and you might have a separate recruiting system which will be feeding in information as to who you hire and where you hire them from. Our company is actually headquartered down in Plano, Texas. For those of you who are familiar with the Dallas area, Plano is just a little north of Dallas, about a half an hour, one of the DFW suburbs. And we're experiencing our first deep freeze of the year today. So about a week ago, it was 85 degrees here, and today it's about 25. So always catches us off guard whenever it comes through. The founders of TrenData are myself. I am the CEO, Tom McKeown, and my co-founder is Aman Hamden, who is the chairman of our board and was the founder and CEO of HR Smart, a very successful talent management company that did single platform recruiting, performance, career, and learning management. And actually the majority of the executive team at TrenData are HR Smart alumni. So we're very acquainted with the talent in HR space and reporting of such things. So I'll start a little bit about what some leading survey firms have talked about, and the advantages of gender and racial equity. It's legislated a lot, and often companies look at it as just something that they have to do, more of a burden. But I'd like to approach it a little bit more from the benefits. Starting with a survey that McKinsey Company did in 2016, where they talked about companies that do have gender and racial diversity tend to perform far above their peers when it comes to national industry medians for financing. So these companies are actually bringing in more money than their competitors who are less diverse. Similarly, Christine Lagarde for the International Monetary Fund talked about that being a global phenomenon. Generally, companies that boost pay and opportunity for women as well, to be equitable with men and promote diversity around the globe tend to earn more than their peers in similar industries. So the situation as it is today in the US, over to the left is just kind of a graph which talks about what the average woman earns per dollar for a man across the US. So the darkest blue ones are ones where they earn 85 cents or more to a dollar, and the lighter the color gets, the less per dollar women earn per men. Now there are some states that have very aggressive state pay laws that go above and beyond what the Equal Pay Act of the mid-1960s put forth. And we're going to look at one of them, just Not necessarily as it's a coming indicator for more states to do this, because as you can probably see, the 4 states that are very aggressive are democratically leaning, and that doesn't necessarily mean that those are going to take hold in Republican leaning states or whatever. But you have to be conscious of these things, and also for what national laws that could be passed that might mirror some of these state laws. So if I go to the next slide, it talks a little bit about the most recent law, the Massachusetts Equal Pay Act, MEPA. It had a very interesting number of distinctions that put into the law that are different from prior laws on equal pay. The first one is all legislation prior to this law always talked about comparable work. So that did provide a little bit of an out if you wanted to say, well, it's not exactly the same work. So they changed the wording in the law to say that work is substantially similar, so that you can infer a little more as to whether people are doing the same job, even if they don't have maybe exactly the same title or responsibilities. Another thing the law put in is it restricts employers from asking candidates about salary history. I know as I've been in my 30-year career and working in the world, for most of it, I got asked what was I making at my last job. And that is no longer legal, at least in Massachusetts, for this law. And employees can discuss their compensation with each other at the workplace. So what was often illegal at companies, and this was actually brought out in TV shows and movies in the 70s and 80s, is if you tried to keep people's compensation of other people unknown. And there were companies would actually retaliate for an employee who would tell someone else how much they're making. So that's not illegal in this law. It is the company can't retaliate for you doing that. There's also some very particular things as far as to women is there is no reduction in credit for seniority due to either pregnancy, family, or medical leave. And that could actually go both ways. So if a man took off for paternal leave, the same thing would be in effect. So that is part of the law. And one of the biggest things, which kind of leads into what we're going to talk about, is it provide a lot of legal incentives for companies to conduct self-evaluations. What we talk about on the next slide is going to be equal pay audits within the company. Now, this has been a common practice, not always legally mandated at companies, where a company will go through the organization and audit the pay of men and women doing what's considered to be equal work in the organizations. And it has, really 3 main purposes. The first is to identify any differences in pay between men and women doing equal work, to investigate the causes of any differences, and try to eliminate any instances of unequal pay that cannot be justified. Now, some companies actually expand this and do what's called an equal pay and opportunity audit. So it has a couple of more factors in it. So in addition to seeing what's equal pay and anything connected with compensation, also to look at any unequal issuing of promotions or choice assignments, unequal designations in layoffs or firings. You do a layoff, is it 80% women or maybe another minority or something, and any discriminatory recruiting practices. This could be gender-related, group-related, age discrimination, things like that. So a lot of companies are trying to upgrade their policies to eliminate all 6 of these things. So really the audit is a pretty simple 5-step process, and we'll kind of walk through each one of them, involving collecting data, identifying disparities, finding out if the disparities are legitimate or not, reviewing those unexplained disparities, and then taking action. So let's look at each of these kind of one by one. So collecting the data, not always an easy chore, as anybody such as myself who's been in the software, and particularly the HR software industry for a number of years. The data is often spread out over multiple systems. You might have pay and demographics on one system, your HRIS, but you might have performance data, hiring data, who the manager is on other systems. And to get a really accurate picture, you need to be able to bring all this data together and filter it and show stuff. You always talk about that numbers don't lie. They don't lie, but they can hide. And if all you have to go off of is long rows of spreadsheets with numbers in it, there might be anomalies in there that your eyes just might be too tired to see. So we'll talk a little bit about that later on. But first of all, collecting both the current data and the historical data. The step two is, once you've done that, is to see if you can identify the disparities. Looking for instances of where people are doing comparable work, and then trying to establish some sort of benchmarks where you can see whether someone is overpaid or underpaid or not equivalently paid. And then also see if you can put it together by group and job level. Not everybody's doing the same work at the same level or putting the same type of performance in. So you want to be able to benchmark and have some things to measure against as you're trying to figure out, are people doing comparable work? Now, once you've put the data together and you do see some anomalies, you want to be able to see, is it a legitimate reason that people aren't getting paid the same, or is it not a good reason? Things that you could have people in similar roles, but there are reasons why someone might be getting paid a little more. Actually, I should have those reversed, but the biggest one is having training or education. So a lot of things I know in the teaching profession and a lot in the technology profession, having certification and education levels is very key often to being paid more and also getting to certain promotions. Travel is kind of one that doesn't show up in a lot of data, but it's one that should be documented and made known. Some people work a lot more because they do travel. So if two people are doing the same job, but one person can't travel and does it as much as they can from their desk, whereas someone is getting on a plane and going, cross country and spending, a lot more hours away from their family. Those are reasons why you might be able to document why someone is making more. And of course, merit and seniority. You could be in the same position but received not quite as good performance reviews or something, and that could affect what you're getting paid. And also seniorities, particularly in a lot of very standard jobs where the military comes to mind. You've been there a longer time, you make more just based by tenure, and that's true often in a lot of companies and a lot of positions. And the problem comes, of course, is when you find those disparities that are not reasoned or justified. And there's a lot of reasons why so many of those currently do exist. Really, the top two are the main culprit reasons. It's basically there's very poor management guidance from the top down. A lot of policies aren't documented or communicated, as is in the second bullet. So how can you expect your management team to really know how to go about it? So what this results in is a lot of subjective decision making, gut calls, as we say it. I think he's doing a good job. He's a good guy. Maybe who you hang around with or who you have chemistry with tends to enter in, and you allow people to have some degree of unconscious bias. We're human beings. We all have our biases, and the more you can take that out of the equation, the less you'll be subject to either making these bad decisions and the repercussions that come from them. But a lot of the reason is because things have always been done a certain way. I know when I first got promoted into management, the things I did were, none of them were bad or anything, but I usually took what my managers in past have done and tried to implement a lot of those policies and go forward and tweak them. But you do a lot of what you've seen before. So that's how a lot of these bad practices might get into place as well. So once you've been able to review and identify what these bad policies are, then you got to take action and figure a way to remove them from the place of business. So first thing is to document and execute a plan where you can put into play fact-based policies. And if you have written fact-based policies, that eliminates the subjectivity. Someone can make a gut call, but if it's not by how things are documented, then it doesn't get done. A good way, what a lot of companies have done, is implement pay ranges for certain positions. This has become very standard, but not every company does them. But where you say a certain position has this level, here's the pay range, and you can be anywhere in that range dependent on seniority, merit, education, or whatever that you might have it, and you have a justification of why someone in a pay range is a little higher than somebody else. A lot of companies just negotiate when someone comes on board and pay them what they need to do to get them, and then you have these big disparities. So having pay ranges in place is very key to eliminating this kind of discrimination. Communication, of course, making sure that it gets out to all the managers, having handbooks, having documented policies in websites, corporate websites where people can get to them, and giving very good training to your managers and not always leaving it up to them to kind of learn on the job from the people around them. Put them into management training and let them know the policies and how to act in certain situations. So, how can technology or a people analytics software or something like this help out? Well, first of all, it helps you visualize the situation. I made reference to this earlier. You could have a lot of disparities in your company, but if the report you get is a printed out 30-page spreadsheet, or however many employees, you figure a line for each, it's very difficult to go into that and do the subjective or the objective analysis to find out if there are any bad behaviors going on. So if you can visualize the system, it allows your information to be a lot more fact-based to put policies into place. And then it also allows you to enforce this guidance on an ongoing basis. So you can always be able to pull up and see, and we'll show a little bit about how you can drill down and get to really specific instances of where anomalies are taking place and have to be addressed. The analytics part of it, analytics is essentially trended metrics. So you can see not only how things are happening today, but if there's been a pattern over time that has been getting worse or getting better, that needs to be addressed. And also it gives you the ability to justify the investment you're going to make. If you're going to be putting these gender equity in place, and it goes as leaders in the industry say, this is actually going to make more money for you. And it's always nice to be able to say, hey, look, we put these processes in place, and now the company is revenues are up 20 versus 10%, and we're 30% more profitable. So that being the case, I am going to drop out of the presentation for a second and just give you a quick look at the TrenData People Analytics solution. So what you're looking at right now is our standard dashboard. Essentially what you have here is the dashboard is a snapshot in time. So as of the last data came in, whether it was a file upload or real-time API extraction from your systems, tells you how many employees you have, average tenures, the average reports per manager, a couple other things. And we're going to drill into a few of these to look at some drill down of things to see where anomalies might take place. But this gives you the information, the snapshot as it was of end of November. If you want to go back in time, you can always go look at, if you wanted to see how things were in October, you can always flash back to that. And you can also look at a year-to-date aggregation. Let me just stay in the current time here and look a little bit at number of employees. So this is a company that has 1,016 employees. I can drill down on that. And what it's going to show me is how many employees I have, male versus female. So it looks like I have more females in my population than male. But we also provide the ability to drill down on these statistics. So let me go across to here, and you can look at by various job levels what the distribution is. So for example, if I have just looking at my staff, none of my management, I can see that down at the staff level, still about the same, 55-45 male to female. If I look at the manager level, it still is about current, actually a little bit higher, more female than male. But if I go up to the director level, all of a sudden things swap. And all of a sudden it's predominantly male at the director level, as well as the vice president level. So you can see that you start to have some sort of an anomaly as to what's going on. And when you do this filtering, just about when you do the filtering, it will change this view down below you. So now I'm looking just at executive vice presidents and vice presidents, and it'll list them all down here below me. I can go in and move fields around what I want to see down there. And at any time, if I wanted to, I could output this to a CSV or an Excel file. It's sortable, so if I want to look at, by performance, I can do that as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about this a little later. So that's just some overall look at your population. Let's go and talk about the one we've been concentrating on, which is salary. So if I go over here to average salary, I have a comparison of the total averages of all the salaries in my organization and what industry benchmarks are for all those positions combined. So right now I'm paying about an average of 136, which is about 10,000 less than the industry averages, something I might want to address. But I'm going to go down here and drill down on this and show a little bit more information. So as I drill down on average salary and look at it in terms of dollars, I show both male and female drill downs, and both are below industry average, but the average male makes about $6,000 more than the average female. I can go and look at the analytics, which will trend this over the last couple of last year, for example, and you'll see also here that it seems to be a pretty consistent pattern as I move this to gender related, that a little bit more is being paid to male, not much, but still a level here. And if I want to go back and see if I can identify any particular instances, I can go and do that. For example, with that multi-filter, for example, if I wanted to look at perhaps everybody in the securities division located in the state of New York, who is at the staff level, and I can see that I'm paying the male there quite a bit more than my female. So I can go down the similar position. So if I can go down and look at, it's about a $50,000 difference for what is relatively the same position. Now there is possibly some evidence for that. The last performance review, Thomas here got a 4 versus Tara getting a 3, but that does still seem to be a pretty big disparity. I've had the ability to adjust this view. I might want to take a look at who their manager is, and if I go and add that to the equation, I look down and see they both report to Jack Holbrook. So it might be something where I go and take a quick chat with Jack and see if there's any other reasons why this is, but and if he's following policy and such. So that's how you can kind of look at things via salary. One other area I did want to show and how you can look at it is also by source of hire. Are we doing anything in our recruiting practices? So right now this graph shows me all the various places that I am recruiting people from. And if I go to the drill down, the first view it's going to give me is the breakdown of male and female, and where I'm getting, looks like most of my female candidates are coming through job boards, whereas most of the males are coming through LinkedIn. But again, I would like to kind of take a look and see if I'm bringing people in at the same level. So what I'll do is, again, go into this drill down filtering and take a look at consumer banking. It's actually consumer banking. We'll try, now it's consumer banking. So you can see I have a number of people in consumer banking. Let's look at just the ones in the US. And let's again stick with staff level. And what I see is I'm hiring the one male that I've hired, Dan Remington, came in decidedly higher than some of the female counterparts who were hired. So again, that might be something I might want to look into my practices. It might be different levels within the same staff, or it might be based on education or things. But again, this highlights an anomaly that you at least needs to be taken a look at. So, you know, the drill down capability, the analytics gives you a great way to visualize and look at things. You can also see how this might affect revenues. For example, if I have a revenue per employee, I could then possibly do a drill down on that and see you know, what kind of data that gives me as far as how I might have an effect going forward by hiring a more diverse population. So that being the case, I am going to move back to the presentation and open it up for questions. I think I saw a few come via chat. One question is, how does the system normalize salaries across different regions and countries? One of the ways it does that is it imports benchmarks from various companies. So you can bring in the standard pay salaries for those particular areas, and it'll normalize those. So if you bring in the benchmarks, it'll let you know what should be paid at that level versus what is actually being paid. And of course, things might be less so in India versus the US and such like that. Okay, good question. We have another question based on can you add more metrics to the dashboard? Absolutely. If I go back to it, you basically, we come with 18 out of the box metrics. There are ones over here on the side that you can also include. If I want to put in one for performance goals, I just need to simply add that to the dashboard. And as I go over to here, it will add performance scores as well. And you can move that around or adjust the size as well. The dashboard is very configurable. You can also, at any time, whether it's on a metric or an analytic, you can also either post to social media, which I don't know if you necessarily want to do, but you can also email it to someone. If I wanted to email this particular metric out, I would just type in the email address. So, okay. So let me. Okay. One other question is, okay, it kind of leads into my next question is, can you trial the system? Absolutely. So as I move to the next screen here, we do offer a free trial of the TrenData analytics solution that you can have for a couple of weeks or as long as might be need for you to put it through its paces. You can either just go to our website and there's a free trial button up to the upper right, or you can just email marketing@trendata.com. So there's a couple of areas where you can see that. Also, and here's where the screen you would go to, and all we ask for is your name and your email address, and we kind of use the email extension to set up the site. So, and it'll automatically do that and send it out to you. When you come in, it'll play a little video. You can always pause that. It's just a 2-minute demonstration similar to what I did here. But very easy to do a free trial. Also, if you want to view this or any of our prior webinars, we have them up on our site under the Resources tab. You just click that and it'll pull down and show you that there is recorded webinars as well as blogs and other things we have out there. But every webinar we do, we record and post up at the site. So this is totally available to you if you want to. This one will be up probably in a day or so, but we've recorded several prior ones on various topics from turnover to driving revenue. So a lot of good topics out there. So that being the case, if we don't have any more questions, I would like to thank you all for your time. And as of course, if you want to reach out to us, you can either do it marketing@trendata.com or info@trendata.com, or I'm Tom at TrenData.com. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you would like to either try the system or get a further demo. We'd be happy to oblige. So thank you all very much for your time, and have a good rest of your day.